Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to build a real serverless app. And I don't mean those kind of serverless app where you still need to use Firebase or Supabase or any software as a service platform to power your app. We will build a 100% complete serverless app that will run entirely in the browser. Everything about our app will be stored in the browser, including the database. Over the course of this video, we will consider the following talking points. We are going to create a React app with it. Then we are going to install and set up Tailwind CSS in our application. We are going to create the UI for our app, and that's going to include one folder that's going to house 3 different components. We are going to install and set up our database connection. We are going to run some CRUD operations, okay? That includes creating a record, updating a record, editing a record, and deleting a record, okay? So if you think that's a great idea, please leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel so you can get access to all our videos in the future as they drop. And let's dive into the coding for today's video. The first thing we will do is to create a new project, and to do that, we'll open up a terminal and navigate to our project directory. We'll create a new Vite project with the following command. We'll choose React as the framework for our project, and the variant for the framework is going to be TypeScript. Let's navigate into the project directory. We are going to install the dependencies for our app, and with our application dependencies installed, we'll run the project locally to verify that everything went smoothly. We'll open up a browser tab and navigate to localhost 5173, and you can see that we get the expected default template that comes with all React and Vite project. Now let's integrate Tailwind CSS into our React application. We are going to go to the home page for Tailwind CSS and navigate to the documentation. We will choose the setup with Vite. Now we are here, so let's go ahead and copy the command that installs Tailwind and a bunch of other dependencies for us. We'll run this command in our terminal, and then we'll wait for the dependencies to be installed. We'll copy the next command, and this command creates a tailwind.config.json file for us. We are going to copy the contents property from the documentation, and we are going to paste this inside of our tailwind.config.json file. Let's go ahead and copy the Tailwind CSS directives from the documentation. Then we'll paste them in our index.css file. We'll edit the app.css file. We'll remove all of the default content and just return a paragraph element that reads hello world. We'll give the text a red color. Then we'll preview the template in our browser, and you can see that it is updated. Now let's set up the template for our app. But before we do that, you should do that for time's sake. Our app is going to be as simple as possible, and as such, we build a to-do app. I'm going to create a new folder inside of our src folder, and I'm going to name this folder to do. Inside of this folder, we'll create an index.csx file. This file will export a functional component which we will name to do. I'm going to copy and paste in some templates, but basically this component just exports a template that has 2 buttons. We will later integrate this button to allow us to clear all of our to-dos or to reset our to-do list. You might notice that we have too many div elements for now, but these are part of the templates, okay? I just split them up into different components so they are easier to manage. So let's create a second file which I will name create2do.csx. Inside of this file, we'll export a functional component which we'll name create2do. I'm going to paste in another template which is a form that allows us to create a new to-do. You can see an input field and a button that allows us to create a new to-do. We need to implement some method and variables that are defined on this template, okay? So let's create a stateful variable title with a method for updating that stateful variable. Then we need to implement the handle create method, which is called whenever we try to create a new to-do. To do this, we'll define a prop handle create on the create to-do component, and the type for this handle create prop is going to match the function definition for the handle create method, okay? Then we'll paste in the link element for the awesome on our index.html file. We are also going to paste in the script tag for font awesome. Next, we'll create a new file inside of our to-do folder, and this file is going to be named todos.tsx. Inside of this file, we'll create a new functional component, todos. We'll export this component as default from this file. I'm going to copy and paste in some more templates and let me briefly walk you through the template inside of this component. We have a div element, and inside of that div, we have a list element. We loop through the to-dos item and then return a list item for each to-do. The list item contains a checkbox that allows the user to mark the to-do as completed. Then we have the title of the to-do and a button that allows the user to delete a to-do. We have a handle delete function we need to implement, a handle update function which we will also implement later. Keep in mind, we also need to implement the to-dos array that we are looping through. We are going to implement all of this as props on the to-dos component, and as thus the to-do component, the to-dos components, we have a to-dos prop, which is an array, a handle update prop, whose type matches the type for the handle update function, and finally we accept a third prop, handle delete, whose type matches the type for the handle delete function. Let's create a new folder inside the src folder. We'll name this file helper.txt. This file is going to export some useful functions and variables that's going to help us in building our application. So let's create a to-do type which we export from this helper.txt file. The to-do type will have the following properties: an ID property, which is a string, a title property, which is a string, a status property, which is a string of a narrowed type, a created art property, and an updated art property. We'll navigate into the to-dos file and set up our to-dos to be of type to-do. We'll navigate into the index.tsx file inside the to-do folder. We import and use both the create to-do and the to-do component. We'll create a stateful variable to-do whose type is a to-do array. Then we'll set the to-dos prop on our to-dos component to be the stateful variable we just created. Let's implement the functions for interacting with our to-dos. For now, all the functions we will define will just be placeholder functions. We will actually implement the body of the functions later on. So let's create a handle create method that is going to take in a title argument, which is a string. Then we'll set the handle create prop on the create to do component to be equal to the handle create method we just defined. We'll create another method, handle update, which accepts two arguments, an ID property and a status property, both of which are of type string. Then we'll create a handle delete method which takes in an ID argument, which is a string. Then we'll set the handle delete prop and the handle update prop on the to-dos component to be equal to their respective functions. Let me import the to-do type as to-do type inside of this component to get rid of the error on the stateful variable whose type would now be of to-do type array. It is time to get started integrating our database, and for that we need to install UUID to help us create UUIDs for our to-dos. With UUID installed, we will go ahead and install our database, and that is going to be Sql.js. Sql.js is an npm package that allows us to integrate an embedded SQLite database into our application. All of our data will be stored inside of this embedded SQLite database. With Sql.js installed, we will navigate to our helper.cs file and import init Sql.js from Sql.js. Then we'll export a variable SQL from this file. This variable will store the result of initializing our SQLite database. I'm going to call init Sql.js and pass in a config object. Okay, this config object, on that config object, we will set the locate file property to be a function which returns a string. The string is a location for a WASM file that comes with Sql.js when you install it. So I'm basically just going to copy and paste it in. Let's install the types for Sql.js so we get autocomplete in our IDE. I'm going to create a function get to-dos. This function will be responsible for fetching all the to-dos we have created. This function accepts a database argument. I'm going to copy and paste in the body of the function, and let me quickly walk you through the function. We have a string str, which is an SQL statement. Then we call the exec method on the database. This method executes the SQL statement on the database. We store the results of the execution in the variable result. Then we process the results to obtain the to-dos, which will be returned for the function. Okay, don't worry much about how I process this result to get the to-dos from the function. You can always view the code using the link in the description, okay? Because I'm going to paste in a link to the code on GitHub in the description below. I'm going to navigate back into the index.txt file in our to-dos folder. Inside of this module, I'll import the get to-dos function we just created. I will set up a use effect inside, and inside of this use effect, I will try to get the to-dos in the database by calling the get to-dos method which we just created. We will store the result of calling the get to-dos method inside of a variable to-do, and you can observe that we get an error. The get to-dos function needs a database object. We need to set up a database. For that, we will import the SQL object from the helper file. Then we'll create a database object, which is the result of calling a new SQL.database constructor. Then we are going to run a migration on the database. This is just a simple migration that creates the to-do table if it does not already exist in the database. Then we pass the database object as an argument to the get to dos function. We are going to call the set to dos function and passing the underscore to do as an argument to it for updating the to dos stateful variable. Then inside of the use effect, we are going to come down and call this fetchup method we just created inside of this use effect. Let's see what our template looks like. We'll open up a browser. You can now see that our template is looking smooth. You can see the title, the input feed, and the button for creating a to-do. And under that, you should see all the to-dos we have created inside of our database. But for now, we have not created any to-do, so you will not see anything. You can also see the two buttons under that which we created earlier. Now let's implement the function for creating a to-do. We'll navigate to the helper file, and inside of this file, we'll create and export a function create to-do. This function accepts two arguments, a database object and a title for the to-do. Inside this function, we'll paste in the body of the function. You can see that we create a string which inserts a new to-do into the table with the title we pass in as the argument to it. I'm going to import v4 as uuid v4 from uuid, and I'm going to call the uuid v4 function. This creates a new uuid for us. Then we are going to prepare the SQL string by calling database.prepare and pass in the string as an argument to it. And then we are going to run the statement. We'll navigate to do /index.txt file. Then we import the create to do function from the helper file. Inside this handle create function, we are going to call the create to do function, and we are going to pass in the DB object as the first argument to the function. We are also going to pass in the title as the second argument to it, and under it we'll fetch the to-dos from database again and update the stateful to-dos variable. Okay, now let's create a new to-do by visiting our browser. We will give this to-do a title, create a new project, and we are going to go ahead and press the add button. You can see that we now have a new to-do. Now let's refresh the browser, and you can see that the to-do we just created have disappeared from the template. This is because each time we refresh our browser, our database gets created from scratch again, and thus we lose all of our data. We are going to sort out this issue later, but for now, let's implement the method for updating a to-do. I'm going to navigate to the helper file, and inside of this module, we'll define and export another function, update to-do, which takes in a database object as its first argument. The ID of the to-do we want to update is the second argument, and the status we want to set for the to-do is the third and last argument. Inside of the body of the function, I'm going to copy and paste some code, and let me quickly walk you through that code. First, I create a string str, which is an SQL statement for updating the to-do. We'll prepare the string by calling db.prepare and passing str as an argument to it, and finally we are going to run the statement. So let's navigate back into to do /index.csx, and inside of this file we are going to navigate to the handle update function. Inside of this handle update function, we'll call the update to do function which we just created. We'll import this update to do function from the helper file. Then we'll pass in the DB object as the first argument to it. We'll pass in the ID of the to do we want to update as the second argument to it, and then finally the status is going to be completed as we want to complete the to do. Then we will call the get to dos function and update our to dos stateful variable once again. So let's open up our browser and create a new to do. I'm going to click on the checkbox to complete the to-do, and you can see that it remains checked, showing us that our to-do has been completed. So let's navigate into our application and implement the method for deleting the to-do. So we are back inside of our helper.ts file, and inside of this file we'll define and export another function, delete to do. Inside of this function, we'll create an SQL string, which is a simple statement for deleting a to-do. We'll navigate back to to-do /index.txx file, and inside the handle delete method, we'll import and use the delete to do function. We'll pass in the database object as the first argument to it, and the ID of the to-do we want to delete as the second argument to it. And then we are going to update our to-do state variable after deleting a to-do. So let's open up our to-do /todos.txs to be sure that we are actually calling this handle delete function. And you can see that there is a button with an on-click handler for deleting a to-do. So let's open up our browser. We are going to create a new to-do, which we are going to check and then delete. And you can see that it is deleted from our UI. So let's work on ensuring that our database is not refreshed every time we reload the browser. And to do that, we need to navigate to the helper file. We will define and export a function, export database, which takes in a database object as an argument. Inside of this function, we'll create a data array object, which stores the result of calling the export method on the database object. The data array object is a uint8 array, and as such, we'll store it locally by calling local storage.setItem method. The name of the data we want to store is db, while we will call the toString method on the data array and store the results inside of our local storage. Now we'll navigate to the to-do /index.txx file. We import the export database function, which we will call anytime we have to make a mutation to the database. That is, anytime we create a to-do, update a to-do, or delete a to-do. Now we have exported our database, we need to ensure we import it each time this component loads up. And to do that, we'll move up to where we create our database object, and we are going to open up the initialization of the SQL.database. This constructor accepts an argument, which is a uint8 array, okay? If you put 2 and 2 together, you know that we have to get the uint8 array string we stored inside of our local storage, convert it into a uint8 array, and pass it as an argument to the SQL.database connection. So let's do that inside of one line now, shall we? We'll call new uint8 array and expand the function call, passing in a call to local storage.getItem db. We'll change a call to the split method because local storage always returns a string. The delimiter to the split function will be a comma, and then we'll map the array created from the split function into an array of numbers. That's a weird hack, right? Let's not worry much about how it works, and let's just know that it works, okay? You can see that if we go back into our browser and create a new to-do named finished CRUD projects, you can see that it stays inside of our UI even after I refresh the web page, okay? And if I create a second to-do, start a new project, and also refresh the page, you see that both to-dos still stay on the web page after I refresh the web page. If we complete the most recent to-do and also refresh the page, you observe that our data is in sync and the start a new project is completed. And the same thing is going to happen if we delete the last to-do, finish old projects, and refresh the web page. You'll see that we now only have one to-do in our UI. I'm going to let you figure out how to clear all of the completed to-do and reset the to-do list. That is the buttons at the bottom. There are tons of powerful applications that we can build using this approach, especially when it comes to the serverless app domain. If you think this video was a bomb, please leave it a like. If you want to see how we can build a WhatsApp app-like application using this serverless approach, then make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get access to that video and all of our videos in the future as they drop. I'm going to see you in the next video.